Rach, a passionate wildlife advocate known for sharing her lively life with animals, found herself once again upstaged by the sassiest little star in her care. A bobcat kitten with more attitude than size. Still growing into his oversized paws but already full of spunk, this feisty baby had discovered a new game. Stealing a rainbow-colored blanket he absolutely knew wasn't his. She'd named him Bandit, and true to his name, he wasn't causing trouble, he was on a mission. And this little thief clearly had a plan. With dramatic protests and piercing gaze were so over the top that Rach had to follow him, amused and curious. What she discovered at the end of his mission melted every heart. Before we start, hit the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. In the high country of northern Colorado, there is a place locals jokingly call the Funny Farm. It sits among the foothills like a small makeshift village. A collection of heated barns, converted chicken coops, and one very overworked break room. Officially, it's the Mountain View Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. But to those who work there, it's a symphony of mismatched sounds. On any given day, the melody is a chorus of baby songbirds demanding insects. The deep basso profondo of an indignant badger who once lost a fight with a lawn ornament, and the incessant squeaking of orphan squirrels convinced they will wither away if a syringe of formula is 10 seconds late. Rachel "Rach" Thompson has conducted that symphony for more than 2 decades. At 62, she moves with the calm efficiency of a woman who has been headbutted by elk and still found time to bake cupcakes. She gives every patient in her care a full, dignified name, believes in the restorative powers of fleece blankets, and has a soft spot for animals whose personalities are bigger than their bodies. Nothing, however, prepared her for the pint-sized tornado that rolled into her life on a cold January morning and promptly tried to steal the entire break room. It happened on January 4th. A red sun was just climbing over snow-capped peaks. The rehab center glowed pink and gold, and Rach's boots echoed through the halls as she checked incubators and heating pads. As she approached the Bobcat nursery, a new sound cut through the familiar rhythm. A sound so shocking that she stopped mid-stride, head cocked like a doe listening for coyotes. It started as a low growl and built into something wholly unnatural, like a 2-stroke engine with anger issues or a kazoo arguing with a chainsaw. Later, Tommy, her 25-year-old veterinary assistant, insisted it sounded like his father's leaf blower on its last legs. Sarah, the morning shift supervisor, swore it was a Formula One car spinning out on gravel. Dale, the retired trucker who volunteered on Tuesdays, compared it to his old Ford trying to start on a February morning. Whatever it was, it reverberated through the nursery walls with mechanical fury. Through the observation window, Rach finally spotted the culprit. He was no bigger than a cantaloupe, just a puffball of spotted fur with ears too large for his head and golden eyes that could cut glass. His paws were oversized, his claws needle-sharp, and currently clenched in his tiny jaws was the corner of a rainbow tie-dyed fleece blanket at least 3 times his size. The blanket belonged to the staff break room and had recently been commandeered by Bartholomew, a 3-legged opossum with an anxiety disorder. Bartholomew treated the blanket as his security object. Without it, he refused persimmons and stared at walls. The kitten clearly had other plans. When he saw Rach watching, he froze, amber eyes widening. He emitted another growl. That rattled the glass.
No.
Rach doubled over in laughter despite herself. "Tommy," she called between giggles. "You have to hear this. Someone replaced our bobcat with a lawnmower." Tommy jogged over, wiping his hands on his scrubs. He stared through the window and nearly dropped a bottle of medication. "Holy cow," he whispered, eyes wide. "He sounds like my dad's leaf blower when it's choking on pine needles." The kitten, offended by his growing audience, dug in his heels and resumed his mission. Every few steps, he readjusted his grip, muscles straining, tail lashing like a metronome. The blanket dragged behind him like a royal train, gathering dust bunnies and causing an occasional puppy to trip. All the while, he kept up that absurd soundtrack, somewhere between a weed whacker ingesting gravel and a very angry harmonica. Rach placed her hands on her hips. "Russell T. Covington," she announced in a tone usually reserved for recalcitrant raccoons. "You put that down right now. That's Barty's blanket." The kitten ignored her completely. He tilted his chin, squared his shoulders, and growled louder. "Who's Russell T. Covington?" Tommy asked. "His full name," Rach replied. "All the animals get full names. Respecting their wild spirits starts with treating them like individuals. But because he's clearly about to embark on a life of crime, we've been calling him Bandit. Some days he also answers to Rusty, when he's not busy impersonating a chainsaw." Just 3 weeks earlier, Bandit and his sister had arrived at the center. Hikers found them shivering in a hollow log. Tire tracks nearby told a familiar, heartbreaking story of a collision on the mountain roads. The kittens were maybe 4 weeks old, eyes barely open. Rach had named the delicate female Willow for the way she bent in the breeze. Tommy nicknamed her Biscuit because her paws kneaded the air like dough when she nursed. Regardless of what they were called, one thing was clear from the moment of intake. The brother was fire, the sister a wisp of smoke clinging to life. Bandit appointed himself her guardian. He hissed at approaching shadows, swatted hands that reached to clean their enclosure, and now, apparently, had chosen to steal a rainbow blanket for reasons known only to him. Rach could have stopped him. She could have plucked him up by the scruff and returned the fleece to its rightful owner. But her instincts, honed over decades of reading animal behavior, told her to wait. His back-arched determination felt like more than kitten mischief. Bandit's journey across the rehab floor became an odyssey. He navigated around a giant stuffed tortoise that served as a bed for a litter of foster puppies. He dragged the blanket under a table where Captain Jack, a one-eyed cat, was napping. The old Tom blinked lazily, utterly unbothered by the procession. Butterball, a golden retriever mixed the size of a loaf of bread, dared to sniff the trailing edge and received such a ferocious snarl that he somersaulted backwards into his water dish. Dale whistled low. "He's moving like a constipated snail," he observed. "But I respect the hustle." "It's the principle of the thing," Sarah replied, having abandoned her textbook on avian bone structure to watch. "I vote he sounds like a Formula One car that's about to hit the wall." "Nope," Tommy grinned. "Definitely a leaf blower with a grudge." They followed at a respectful distance as Bandit reached the door to the nursery wing. It was propped open just enough for a kitten, but not enough for a kitten plus a blanket. Bandit tried to push through head first. The blanket bunched up like a rainbow battering ram. He tried to pull it from the other side. It refused to budge. After several failed attempts, he did something that made Rach's heart swell. He grasped just the corner of the fleece, backed through the door, and slowly coaxed the blanket after him. He was problem-solving, and he was doing it for someone else. The nursery wing was dim and warm, filled with the sweet scent of milk replacer and clean laundry. Bandit's low growl morphed into breathless grunts as he reached the last enclosure on the left. Rach peered over the half wall. Inside the clear-topped den box lay Willow/Biscuit. She was smaller than her brother by half, her spotted coat thin over protruding ribs. Her blue eyes, once dull, flickered as she watched him approach. She chirped, a tiny bird-like sound, and for a second, her ears perked. Bandit answered with a purr that still somehow managed to sound like malfunctioning yard equipment and hauled the blanket over the lip of the box. The fleece tumbled inside in a fluffy heap. Willow's reaction was instantaneous. She buried her face in the fabric, inhaling the scent of coffee and break-room banter it had absorbed. Her body relaxed for the first time in days. Then, with a burst of energy no one expected, she pounced. She emerged from the folds with a strip of purple fleece on her head like a crown, her eyes bright with playfulness. The two kittens tumbled together, chirping and purring and batting at one another's tails. The mechanical growl had been replaced by the rustle of kittens rediscovering joy. Rach covered her mouth. "He stole it for her," she whispered, her chest tight. He knew she needed comfort. Tommy wiped his eyes with his sleeve. "Sorry," he muttered. "It's just, he knew she was sad, didn't he? He knew exactly what would help." "Animals understand more than we ever give them credit for," Rach replied. "Especially siblings who've survived trauma together. Their bonds are deeper than our human brains can comprehend." She snapped a quick video, the kittens wrestling on their Technicolor mountain, and posted it to the center's social media with a caption that simply read, "Bobcat Kitten steals blanket, growls like weed whacker and melts every heart." The internet exploded. Comments poured in from around the world. "That's not a growl," one person wrote. "That's a turbocharged purr." Another insisted someone should check if there was a tiny motorcycle trapped in the kitten. Users tagged friends, shared the clip on forums, and flooded the post with thousands of heart emojis. Within hours, major news outlets were calling. Within a week, the video had been viewed millions of times. Amid the laughter, there was an outpouring of support. Donations arrived from as far away as Japan. School children sent hand-drawn pictures of bobcats with rainbow blankets. A national outdoor gear company designed a limited edition tie-dyed camping blanket, promising to donate proceeds to bobcat conservation. Local officials, pressed by constituents who'd fallen in love with a weed whacker-voiced kitten, began to seriously discuss wildlife crossing initiatives on nearby highways. Dr. Margaret Sullivan, Rach's longtime friend and the center's veterinarian, a woman who'd seen more injured wildlife than she cared to remember, watched the video in her clinic later that day. When she arrived for the kitten's checkup, she found Bandit sprawled atop the rainbow fleece, his sister nestled against him. Biscuit's once dull eyes tracked Margaret's movements with bright curiosity. When the veterinarian gently lifted her for examination, the tiny bobcat hissed with surprising vigor. "Well, would you look at that?" Margaret said, smiling broadly. "Her eyes are clear, and she's actually alert to our presence." "The blanket stays," she declared after examining them both. "I don't care if it was the staff's favorite comfort item. These two need it more." "Already decided that," Rach replied. "Actually, I stopped by the thrift store this morning and bought 3 more tie-dye blankets just in case. Although something tells me Bandit is going to have opinions." Bandit lifted an amber eye at the mention of his name and emitted a warning rumble reminiscent of a rusty gate hinge. The message was clear. He would be in charge of blanket selection henceforth. Over the following weeks, the transformation was remarkable. Willow/Biscuit gained weight and confidence. Her cough faded, her energy surged, and she developed a reputation for acrobatic leaps off the climbing structure and an obsession with feathers. Bandit, Rusty, if you were Tommy, continued to act as self-appointed curator of all things soft. He sniffed every new towel, blanket, or piece of clothing that entered the nursery. If it met his exacting standards, multicolored, interesting texture, and for some inexplicable reason smelling faintly of coffee, he would ceremoniously drag it to their den. If it didn't, he would plant himself on top of it and growl until a human removed the offending item. Even Dale wasn't immune. One of his flannel shirts was declared treasure, while a pristine fleece donated by a corporate sponsor was rejected with prejudice. The sound that had once startled the entire center became famous in its own right. Supporters begged for Bandit's greatest growls as ringtones. College a cappella groups attempted to replicate his weed whacker purr for charity performances. But more importantly, people were listening when Rach and her staff talked about why the kittens were orphaned in the first place. Habitat loss is the single biggest threat to bobcats, Rach explained in a follow-up video that nearly rivaled the blanket heist for views. As human development expands, we push these animals out of their hunting grounds and away from safe places to raise their young. Vehicle strikes, like what happened to Bandit and Biscuit's mother, become more common when wildlife corridors are disrupted. We can build roads and protect wildlife if we choose to. She pointed viewers toward petitions advocating for wildlife crossings, reminded them to drive carefully at dawn and dusk, and encouraged landowners to leave corridors of brush and trees for bobcats and other predators to travel safely. The response was overwhelming. Donations funded a new outdoor enclosure where the kittens could practice climbing and hunting in a more natural environment. Volunteers signed up in record numbers. Legislators invited Rach to speak about wildlife infrastructure. And in classrooms across the country, children learned that the mechanical roar of a baby bobcat could spur real environmental change. By late spring, the Rocky Mountains were shedding their snow, revealing meadows of paintbrush and lupine. Bandit and Biscuit shed their kitten fluff for sleek adolescent coats. Their play fighting evolved into serious practice hunts. Staff reduced human contact, placed live prey in their enclosure, and watched anxiously as the siblings honed their skills. Bandit's protective instincts translated neatly into predatory prowess. He pounced with confidence and dispatch. Biscuit was stealthier. She stalked with a patience her brother lacked and often got to the mouse first. When Margaret delivered the final assessment in late May, her voice held equal parts pride and melancholy. "They're ready," she said. "They maintain appropriate fear of humans. Their hunting is excellent, and they're the perfect age for release." Rach's chest tightened, but she nodded. Letting go was the hardest part of rehabilitation, but it was also the point. She and Tommy chose a release site deep in Roosevelt National Forest, far from roads but rich with water, prey, and potential dens. On the morning they loaded the transport carriers, the sky was clear and blue. Bandit paced inside his crate, muscles coiled like springs. Biscuit lay quietly, but her ears flicked at every sound. "You know," Tommy said as they drove up the winding road, "I'm going to miss that ridiculous growl." "Me too," Rach admitted, brushing away a tear. "But what I'll miss more is watching him take care of her. That kind of devotion reminds you that animals have emotional lives as rich as ours." At the release site, they opened the carriers and stepped back. Bandit emerged first. Of course he did. Amber eyes scanning the forest. His nose twitched, processing 1,000 scents humans could never perceive. He turned and chirped softly. Biscuit stepped out beside him. They stood shoulder to shoulder for a heartbeat and then ventured forward, exploring fallen logs and boulders. They didn't rush. They took in their world, then made it theirs. Just before disappearing into the trees, Bandit paused. He grabbed a small branch with dried leaves, dragged it a few feet, and dropped it at Biscuit's feet. She chirped, pounced on it playfully, and then bounded away. He followed, and within seconds their spotted coats melted into the dappled shade. The forest swallowed them, and silence descended except for the wind in the pines and the distant call of a jay. "Did he just bring her one last present?" Tommy whispered. "He did," Rach answered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Beautiful, ridiculous, wonderful little cat." The story did not end at the forest's edge. Trail cameras occasionally captured glimpses of two young bobcats, sometimes together, sometimes apart, always healthy and wild. Rach liked to think she could recognize Bandit's swagger on footage where he dragged a branch across a clearing for no apparent reason. Visitors to the center still ask about them. Meanwhile, the original rainbow blanket, washed, mended, and carefully framed, hangs in the education center. Beneath it, a small plaque reads, "Sometimes the smallest acts of love make the biggest difference." Donated by Bandit, also known as Russell T. Covington. The bobcat who growled like a weed whacker and loved like a champion. Rach continues her work with the same boundless heart and infinite patience that carried her through the blanket heist. She still rises before dawn to heat milk replacer and check incubators. She still names every patient with the respect they deserve. And some mornings, when the world is quiet and she stands alone among sleeping animals, she swears she can hear, somewhere far off in the trees, the faint, ridiculous sound of a weed whacker starting up. It makes her smile, not because she misses the noise, but because she remembers the lesson it carried. Wild animals are not so different from us. They protect those they love. They comfort those in pain. And if we listen, really listen, even a tiny bobcat can teach us what it means to care for one another.